My name is Liam Steele. I am a Life Scout in North Reading's Boy Scout Troop 750. This presentation is about my Eagle Scout project, which was about preserving oral history. My project consisted of interviewing United States military personnel, which is current members and veterans, about their time in the service of their country. With this information that I had revived from them, I created a historical book, an informational video, and posters that will be displayed at the Flynn Memorial Library. I chose to complete this as my Eagle Scout project because of a visit with my great-uncle, who is a Vietnam War veteran. We sat at a clam shack in Western Mass, and he shared stories of his time in the service, which intrigued me. I got in my car to head east towards my home and reflected on the first-hand accounts of stories that would be lost forever if not preserved correctly. This clam dinner quickly snowballed into the project that I am sharing with you today. Before written language existed, family history was passed down from one generation to the next through storytelling. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the stories of 14 United States military servicemen and women. What is oral history? Oral history is a technique for generating and preserving original, historically interesting information, primary source material, from personal recollections through planned recorded interviews. This method of interviewing is used to preserve the voices, memories, and perspectives of people in history. It's a tool we can all use to engage with and learn from family members, friends, and the people we share space with in an interview that captures their unique history and perspective in their own words.
So it started out with Lord Baden-Powell, and it was originally cast as the Wolf Award, and going to be the Silver Wolf was going to be the highest. But then when the BSA formed, they decided that a wolf, they did not want that to be the top award, and that should be more eagle, because that is the American eagle. It's always interesting to me that they've always had 21 merit badges. Originally, the Eagle was another merit badge that you would get. So you'd have to have first class, and then 5 more merit badges would get you life, and 5 more would get you star. And then once you have 21, you're eligible to be Eagle Scout at that point in time. During the whole time, you're only really required to be of service to your school or church or synagogue. But then eventually in 1965, they came back, they made a whole revision, and then that 1965 revision, they came out and said that you had to have a whole project, and it could not be from the approved list. And it had to be, the scout had to plan, develop, and direct it on their own. So what that really means is that there was an approved list of projects before. In order to get life and then star, you had to take a project from the approved list from every council and then work on it. Part of that 65 revision, they went and switched the order of life and star, because they put the star as a 5 points of star for the 5 merit badges. So that's really kind of the history of the Eagle Scout and the Eagle Scout project. They've made a few more iterations. One interesting note, there were originally 5 required merit badges, and of those 5 original required, only 2 of them are still required: first aid and life-saving. Everything else has been changed.
All right, thank you. Could you tell me why eagling is such an honor?
It's an honor because the Eagle Scout is supposed to embody the principles of Scout law, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, and that's what everyone thinks of. And it also means that you should now be comfortable in the outdoors, and you should be comfortable in camping. And hopefully in going through all of these things, we have made you uncomfortable in a variety of situations. How do you pitch a tent? I don't know. How do you light a stove? Oh. How do you go canoeing? Oh. Well, now you've gone through all of these things. We hope that you are learning to be uncomfortable. And in that, you're seeking out the uncomfortable situations where you don't necessarily know all of the variables, but you realize I can get in there and I have the skills to figure it out once I get there, and I can solve the problem, and I can help others as I go, because others have helped you and taught you. It's now your chance to teach others and help them. So that's kind of what I think of as the big honor of Eagle Scout. It shows that you're independent, that you can organize, put things together, that you're honest and trustworthy in the rest of the Scout law.
Great. Does your family have any personal history with the military?
My father was in the Navy, and my father-in-law was also, funny enough, in the Navy at the same time, though they never met. I can trace my ancestors back to the Mayflower, and so therefore I had relatives that were in the Revolution and all the different wars, and the Civil War and everything else.
Oral history is important to learn about the firsthand accounts of veterans and other people that served. My personal family experience with veterans, both of my grandfathers were in the war, Vietnam War and World War II. They both served their time, and one was in the Air Force and one was in the Army.
Oral history important because it keeps culture, history, and tradition with stories from past generations, and it allows newer generations to see and experience what it might have been like back when their grandfather was alive through stories that they've been told.
Do you like remember any like important battles or important missions you went on?
Well, the place I was at is called Quezon, and for 77 continuous days, actually it was longer than that, but officially they say it was 77 days. This was a strategic spot in Vietnam, way up in the northern section, just below the demilitarized zone. And you had two generals, General Westmoreland, our general, and General Yip of the North Vietnamese, both very, very intelligent men. And they were in all aspects hoping or trying to get the North to attack us. And because of all the air power, the artillery, and everything around, we were pretty sure that no matter how many people they threw at us, that we would be victorious. And what they were hoping for is that would be the end of the conflict.
Yeah.
You know, that was, but in mass, that did never happen. Mm-hmm. They had I can't remember the exact amount, 50 or 60,000 troops that had surrounded our area. When I say surrounded, within probably several miles away. You know, which is in combat, that's pretty close. And there were major skirmishes, major battles in the all over the place. They kept firing artillery in on us all the time for 77 days.
Wow.
And so that was the major, was known as Operation Pegasus.
What was that?
And Operation Pegasus was the for the early days, and then they had, towards the end, they had Operation Starlight, and this is when the Air Force came in with their B-52 bombers, and they just plain annihilated the area around us.
It wasn't until I was getting ready to come home that I realized, what the situation was like. But and it was I don't know, I what I did is I took a European out, what they call a European out. In other words, I left the service in Berlin and I flew out about a week later, and I just threw all my military stuff away, dressed in my civilians, got a little suitcase so I looked like I was a college student. That's how I flew home to get through the airports, because it could get pretty ugly. A soldier in uniform walking through an airport back in, 69, 70, 71.
Yeah.
And this is the first I've sat down and probably talked about the military, because you just didn't do it. You came home, you went back to work, and you didn't say nothing about it.
One of my more interesting overseas deployments when I was stationed in Korea, I ended up extending there. So I did it's a typical 12-month assignment. I extended and I did an additional 6 months while I was there. I was assigned to a airborne assault infantry battalion just north of the 38th parallel, so where the demilitarized zone is.
Okay.
So we're the only U.S. troops forward deployed of that area. So we worked very closely with the Republic of Korean Army. So we had kind of augmentation with both groups. We trained together, we deployed together on the 38th parallel. And the U.S. controls one of two bridges over that river. So our assignment was to maintain control of the bridge long enough to evacuate the South Koreans that were there to the other side, if anything was to happen. So it's kind of interesting, like you would wake up in the morning on that particular camp where we were stationed and you're looking at a North Korean flag.
Wow.
You're that close. It's like 300 meters away.
And they have eyes on you
And
the whole time, right?
same thing. They're
Yeah.
right there too.
Yeah.
Back and forth. And we patrol those areas. They would as well, and we get into all that. But pretty interesting assignment for me. It was, again, I was 17 years old, furthest place that I had ever, been away from home. Because we were integrated in with a lot of local Korean forces, we got invites. So we would go to they would bring us home, their families, their houses, different parts of the country. So we got to see a lot there and kind of integrate with their people. And that was really cool. Getting into their culture and their way of life. And it was really interesting, especially at that young, like I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so.
Going into training, there's a lot of stuff I wish I knew that would have been hugely helpful. The biggest thing in the military schools, especially one of the schools that are attrition based, they're trying to make you quit, is everything is a game. Like everything is, you're being put in a situation that's impossible to succeed in, and the goal is not for you to succeed. It's to see how you can deal with failure and adversity, and see how you respond in those high stress situations. And so, when you're going in, you're competitive and, you want to win at everything. It can be extremely stressful when you're put in a situation where you just can't win. And a lot of guys, very capable dudes, will psych themselves out and they'll get eliminated because they've stressed themselves out because they're not understanding what the purpose of, certain schools are. Again, and the purpose of the schools are to, put you in these high stress situations where it's impossible to win, because just, sometimes when you're overseas, you're in a situation where it's impossible to win. And it's, and compromise is the only solution. And sometimes sometimes either side of the compromise aren't ideal, So again, as an officer, huge focus on leadership, obviously, and a huge part of leadership is being able to, maintain a sense of calm and prevent a sense of panic, because especially when you're in a high stress situation, panic is contagious. And if you have someone in a leadership position that does get panicked or stress, even just the way you talk on the radio, that can spread in a millisecond, and then everybody turns into kind of a high stress situation, and people's judgment is affected and all that. So that was a big thing I wish I knew going into Quantico, was like, it's a game. It's a game to test your ability to deal with high stress situations. I think that would have made it, less stressful for me. Being like, okay, I just have to figure out how to stay calm and just deal with discomfort and then just get through it.
When I went to Uzbekistan, like I said, this is a picture of the SRT team. Every Sunday, we call it the band practice. Every Sunday for 6 months, we went to the range. This was a picture at the range. You can see the targets in the back there. I can honestly say I shot so many bullets that I got tired of going to the range. That is not something anybody ever says, either in the military. You go to the range once or twice a year. I mean, we were going every single Sunday.
Did you
for
guys
6 months?
have like competitions and that?
Oh yeah, we practiced moving and shooting. There was an old building down this end of the range that we would practice clearing. We got a couple of the special forces guys that were there to give us a couple of classes.
Yeah.
Where did you go after Iraq?
So I was injured in Iraq. So on June 3rd, we were coming back. I had a meeting with Sheikh, one of the sheikhs in my neighborhood. We were building a project with him. And on the way back, we had to go through Abu Ghraib Market, which was overseen and patrolled by the Iraqi army. So it wasn't one of our sectors, but it was the way back to our base. So we had to, that's, it was the most dangerous part of our mission. Typically, we had a very good relationship in our area. That area, we just passed through, we didn't know really many of the locals. It was a Sunni area, and the Iraqi army was mainly Shia. So there's a lot of tension in that area, to say the least. And I was second vehicle out of 4, and it was it's called a closed wire IED. So it's kind of like a garden hose laid across the road. And when my Humvee rolled across it, it closed the circuit, which set off the IED. And so it went off on our rear wheel. So I was a patrol leader. I was a platoon leader. So I'm in the, as you would say, shotgun. So I had the driver, I had my gunner up top. My interpreter was behind me. And unfortunately, where it hit near the rear axle, right above that is actually where the gas tank is. So it was kind of a double explosion. I got out of the vehicle immediately. I was on fire. So thankfully, stop, drop, and roll, like I learned in kindergarten at the bachelor's school, came into good use for me. My interpreter, unfortunately, did not stop, drop, and roll, and he was walking around on fire, and it was a ambush. So we were getting shot at the same time. Fortunately, the platoon, they're very well trained by the people that were responsible for them before I even got there. They went to where they were supposed to, provided 360-degree security. They returned fire, and I was quickly escorted out of there. I'd say within an hour. They had our QRF came out, quick reaction force. They're on base. They're always ready to come out in case something happens. So they came out and they got me. Unfortunately, my gunner, Sergeant Kimmel Watt, never made it out of the Humvee. He passed away that night. My interpreter and I were taken back to the base aid station, and then we were flown to the green zone, probably 10 miles away at the most. That's where the big hospital was. So in the morning, they fill us up with a lot of drugs. So I can't give you a play-by-play, but they saved me. But my interpreter didn't make it. He had too many burns. They're internal for him. So in the morning, so that happened. It happened on a Saturday night going into Sunday morning. So then Sunday I was there for a little while, and then I flew out to a larger logistical base, and then they flew me to Germany, I believe Sunday night, Monday morning. And I was there for less than a day, and then they flew me to Brooke Army Medical Center, which is outside San Antonio, Texas. I want to say I got there Tuesday night. So that's how I left Iraq. Not how I wanted to leave it, certainly, but very blessed to have made it home.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to join?
It's a great experience. You see a lot of things that the average person doesn't. In my opinion, I think every kid should go in the military. I'm not saying the Marine Corps. I think they should do a year.
Yeah.
They should see how good they have things, because you travel this world and you see how bad it is. Maybe things will change over here and kids will realize how good they have it.
Yeah.
Because it really is an eye-opening when you go someplace in a third world country and see what they don't have.
Yeah.
And you come home, it's like, oh, Jesus, look at this.
Yeah.
They don't have that stuff. They live in clay houses. That's no joke.
Yeah.
So I think every kid should do it. It's a great learning experience. Makes you grow up real quick.
Give you structure and
absolutely
purpose.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm not saying the Marine Corps, in my opinion, because I was one of the hottest branches.
Yeah.
But any branch in the military, I think, would be good for anybody.
Do you have any memorable experiences from when you were serving on the aircraft carrier?
A lot of it was there's a area on the boat called the Crow's Nest. It's when you look at the carrier, you have the tower on one side, on the top of that, there's a little platform that you can go up on. You can't stay up there very long, but there were nights when sometimes I was working nights, I would go up there and watch the jets take off and come in. And it's kind of surreal because you're up there and if there's nothing going on, you're looking around, you don't see anything because you're in the middle of, the Persian Gulf. So you see black all around you and you see jets taking off and coming in at high speed. I think of all the time that I was in, especially when I was on the carrier, that was probably my favorite moment, sitting there watching flight operations go in and out while, in pitch black everywhere else,
I loved the World War II generation. My grandmother grew up in Italy during World War II, so I was always really interested in that. And I thought it was so cool how that generation jumped out of a plane into a foreign country to help other people. And I have a really big sense of adventure and I love history, so I was like, oh, that'd be pretty cool. And to me, you learn how to jump out of a plane, but you learn something really cool about yourself every time you jump out of a plane because it's scary. It takes a lot of courage. And I don't know, it helps you overcome a lot of things in life. And then everything else in your life becomes really easy when you have to jump out of a plane. So
we had to go on the tankers with gallon cans on a rope we run on a small boat, oscillating up and down with the hand, and then this away from the ship and back and forth. They climb up a rope ladder.
Wow.
with the gallon
Yeah, we
tank.
had a long enough rope so you pulled it up later.
Okay.
And then our job was to go out and open the tanks. I forget how we filled the gallon cans, but we we filled the cans, brought it back to our petroleum lab, which did quality control work.
Okay.
And we did that about 10 times in a year, I think so. And at times it was scary. That's true.
Were there any like particularly memorable events that happened when you were on the ship?
Yeah, there two that I remember. We had collision. We're on an oiler, and one time the ship, it was an amphib. Amphibious ship. They're not deep draft. Very difficult to steer, if you will, particularly in tough seas. And we never liked to refuel them because we didn't know what was going to happen. Most of the time it worked out okay. But one time they lost steering control.
Oh, wow.
And they crashed against us. From here, probably ship was from here to the end of your porch.
Okay.
And then there'd be maybe a little bit further away.
Okay.
And then there's, what do you call it? Hoses and so forth. That would bring the oil over. And they lost steering control. And they just crashed into us. And they finally recovered it, but they had to, not stop, but slow their engines down. And they finally recovered it, but that was the end of the refueling operation.
Oh, yeah.
Security forces, super dynamic career field, like I said. And so there are specialists within the career field who all they do is attach themselves to aircraft. And whenever those aircraft go, they go with them, right? Security. So they those aircraft. But during the height of the war, and even, on the downswing of it, there was not enough of those specialized security forces airmen to maintain our airflow in the Middle East.
Okay.
And so they would train up regular security forces airmen to perform those flyaway security missions. So I got to do that in 2014. And that was unique because that was when we surged back into Iraq. So we had already withdrawn from Iraq. And in 2014 is when ISIS kind of stood itself up. And so we were very busy that summer moving Marines, moving equipment. So that was, I would say that was probably the first time, and I had been in the Air Force almost 10 years at that point, that I really saw the might of the entire Department of Defense come together so quickly I mean, we literally had like 400 Marines on the ground overnight. And I'm like, where did all these Marines come from? And equipment that had been staged all over the world that was delivered so that we could, execute this mission.
It was a day, it was hot. It must have been 99 degrees. And one good thing the Marine Corps would do is they wouldn't train you in whether it was 100 degrees. You have to sit around and idle. You do go through the motions, which you couldn't do in the air training. So I was sitting up there in the grassy field, and I had my resting on my elbow, and The guy came up behind me and kicked my arm out and asked me if I was tired. So I said, no, I wasn't tired. He says, well, you look tired. So I said, he brought us into the barracks. And at this time, the barracks was brand new and they had an air conditioner. But he immediately shut the air conditioner off. In a matter of half hour, the place was sweltering. And his game plan was to sit me in the middle of the barracks with the glass of ice water and start to give out orders of doing PT inside the room.
All the other Marines had to do exercise while he sat in the middle of the room doing drinking ice water, and they were all suffering with the heat doing exercises because Rick had stayed on his elbow on outside, and that he was just trying to make an example of him.
I am proud that I was able to serve my country for over 22 years, and even more so that my 2 sons served.
I hope you enjoyed my presentation today. There are heroes in your community with very real stories just waiting to be shared. I hope this project inspires you to seek the stories living within your community